Hello everybody, welcome back to Creating Hanley. I am Kimberly at Creating Hanley, and in today's video we are making this Snail's Trail. This pattern right here, Snail's Trail, from this book, the Quilt Block Bible. And if you have this book, then you can follow along on the online directions. I can't find the online directions, so I'm just going to make this up myself. And I spent all evening, late into the night, last night, trying to figure this out. And I even made a video. And I think I got it finally. But we're doing a new video today. So look at this picture. Study this picture. So you need 4 different colors. And 2 are a medium value. So in this picture, they have 2, the gold color, but you can see they're different fabrics, prints. And then they have a dark value, this navy blue, and they have a light value, this white. So 4 different colors. And let me tell you the measurements that I made. Now, again, this is from this book. This one by Rosemary Youngs. There's another Quilt Block Bible book, but it's not the right year. This one is... I've used this book before in a video. The year on this one is... Don't know. Don't know. Anyway, it's this book. So, what I did was so here's my block. So I started with these little squares these are the colors that I'm using. A light value, 2 medium values, the tan and the gray, and then a dark value, this brown, this chocolate. And then this light one is like a yellowish kind of cream. Okay, so I mimicked sort of what she had on the picture there. Okay, so what I did was I started with these 1.5 inch blocks, and in the other video I had them cut separate, but in this picture they are sewn together. So I started with 1.5 inch blocks, and then you make a 4 patch. You make this little 4 patch. So what you do, you stick your 4 patches together, right? So you sew 2 together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, these 2 together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then you nest your seams so you can see this seam is going this way and this seam is going this way. And then when you put them together, you nest your seams. And then you sew another 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then when you open this up, this is pretty bulky. So I opened up this seam to make it a little less bulky. But there are, I don't know, 4 layers of fabric right here on each side, right at the corner. So that makes it pretty bulky right there. So that's why you kind of want to open up the seams. Otherwise, if you press this to one side, you're going to have a lot of bulk on one side and pretty much nothing on the other side, which makes it a little uneven when you're trying to quilt that, or even sew through it in some way. So anyway, make your 4 patch, 1.5 inch squares. Now I would cut 2 of each fabric, because when you cut the bigger squares, we're going to cut these in half diagonal, which will make 2 squares. 2 different blocks, 2 separate blocks. So here's one, and here's another one started, okay? So I would cut 2 of each color of these 4 colors. Does that make sense? So 2 1.5 inch of the gray, 2 1.5 inches of cream, 2 1.5 inch, 2 1.5 inch. Okay, you get it, right? All right, that's the only time you're going to do that. So you end up with 8 squares. So you use 4 squares per block. So this is, you make a little 4 patch to get started. That's your first thing. Okay? Now, because I couldn't find the directions online, I just kind of winged it. I just made this up as I went. And you can see right here, and yeah, right here, and right here, and right here. Right there. It looks a little bit weird, doesn't it? It looks different from these corners up here, right? It looks a little bit different. So I don't know why I did this, but once I made this, then I just took my next square and I sewed it like this. Weird, I know. And then what I did was I sewed them all on, so it looked weird, definitely. And then, so let me kind of recreate that just to show you what I did so you don't do this. All right, here we go, down here. So I have my 4-patch. And then I took these colors like this, and I sewed them like that. So that is what they looked like when I had them sewn together to make this first layer, first triangle. I did this. And then I took my, what is this, a 4.5 inch, and I lined up this middle line with this 45-degree angle. I know, crazy, right? And then I lined up, so this was lined up, and then wherever these intersections were, I tried to get the edge of the ruler right along where those corners met, and then I trimmed all that off. So all this fabric was waste. I know. What a weird way to do that. I know. So, don't do what I just did. I'm going to show you what you're going to need to do next. So, I wrote down in my little sticky note here. If you start with 1.5 inch little squares to make up your 4-patch in the middle, then what you're going to need is only one of each 4 at 2 inches. So your next square is going to be 2 inches. If you want to give yourself some wiggle room, 2.5 inches. But that's going to be really big. And then what you do, once you have each fabric color, 2.5 inch, then you cut that in half diagonally so that you make a triangle. Now you're going to have 2 triangles. Boop. Separate, right? You're going to have 2 triangles. One in one block, one in the other. Okay? That's why you made 2 4-patches. Then your next set, so that is this first triangle layer. Then your next triangle layer right here, this triangle layer, beep, beep, you want to cut 2.5, maybe 3 inch squares. So again, each color cut a 3 inch square, okay? Then the next layer, a 4 inch square. And then the last layer is a 5 inch square. So you start with 1.5 in the middle, cut a 2 inch square, each color, 4 colors, right? Next layer, 3 inch square, all 4, 4 inch square, all 4, 5 inch square, all 4. That should be it. Then once you have all your squares cut, you cut them all in diagonal one time so that you make half square triangles, okay? Like this. They have to be cut. Now, let's get into this, okay? So, I'm going to start, well, let's just do it this way. So, take you over to my cutting surface right here. Now I'm going to cut all 4 of these. Maybe I should line them up. Try to get them all in the same pile and then just cut once. Now my rotary cutter blade is kind of dull, so getting through all of these might make it wonky, and I might regret doing this, but I'm going to do it anyway. All right, here we go. So There we go. You see that? Just going to take a straight edge, cut from one diagonal corner to the next. And I can tell these are already getting wonky. So let's just do 2 at a time. And you take your rotary cutter. No, you don't have to. If at this point you want to draw a line instead, then you take your pencil and draw that line. And then you can scissor cut along that line. Okay? So now, boop, cut those just like that. All right. Now, separate them. Okay. All right. I'm going to push these out of the way. Now you take your 4 patch right here. And we're going to make a quarter turn. And that's how you get the snail's trail. We make a quarter turn. So here, the first row of triangles make a quarter turn. You actually can't tell that it's a quarter turn because whether you put this here or this here, it's going to be the first triangle layer, okay? So, here we go. All right, so this I'm going to put here. Now, these triangles are too big to go on here. This triangle is for the second layer, but I'm going to use it for the first, and then the others, and then the second. I'm not saying this right. The triangles that I just cut, I'm only doing this for the video. Okay, so don't do this. But I'm going to use both of these for the first and second layer, if that makes sense. So I'm not telling you to do this, but because you can see this triangle overhangs quite a bit on both sides. So this triangle is too big. This will be fine for the second layer, but for the first layer, it's too big. So that means I'm going to have to trim up a lot, okay? I already know that. All right, so this goes here. I'm just laying this out. You don't cut this like this yet, okay? Or sew this like this yet. But you can see this is how you lay out the triangle. So quarter turn, quarter turn, quarter turn, quarter turn, okay? Now, just so you have it laid out and you know how this is going to work in your head, take 2 of these away. And then flip pretty sides together. Line up that triangle along the middle line, okay? The triangle point along the middle line, and make sure this line is straight. If you need to flip it over to make sure that this edge is perfectly straight across, do so. And then if you want to double check, do so again. And then if you want to put a pin or 2 in here, feel free, or a clip, feel free. I'm just going to try to keep it as straight as possible without either a clip or a pin. Okay, and then sew a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Quarter inch seam allowance. And if you have your second block, now you can chain piece and do the other one. I am not doing that. So I sew 1/4 inch seam allowance right there. And now I flip it open so the point is out of the way and you don't inadvertently sew it on the other side. And then you take your, how did I have this? Your dark piece, or whatever is opposite to this one, you take that one and line that up same way, straight edge on here, the tip of the triangle right along the middle line right there. So let me show you. Tip of the triangle right along that middle line, and this edge is perfectly lined up, okay? 1/4 inch seam allowance. And if you want to use a leader, go ahead and do that. 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now, open these up. And this is where you can finger press. If you have your quilt roller, like roller, kind of like, roller, you can do that. I don't have one of those. Or the third way is to use a dry iron and iron the seams. I am going to iron the seams to one side at this point. Okay, now these are way big. They're going to overhang, so I'm going to need to do a lot of trimming right here, okay? Now, the other sides come on, but I'm not going to... So, you can trim up right here. In fact, I should probably do that. Trim these little dog ears off. I'm not going to take the time on camera right now. Maybe I'll do it later, but... Same thing, you want to line up that point right along that seam line right there, and then on this edge. 1/4 inch seam allowance, go for it. So again, right sides are together. And you can open this up. Now again, if you want to cut off these what we call dog ears, I don't know, there's got to be a better word than dog ear. We don't cut the dog's ears. Okay, cut those off. Open this up. And then do the same thing to the other side. Okay, now you see how you've created a longer side on here. If you trim that, that's going to make this a nice long side. So again, trim off these little tags. Line up your point right there at the middle line. So again, line up that point. And then line up here, 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, and then you can trim off those if you like. Open it up, and now we've just started the first triangle of the snail's trail. Okay, now we're going to do the second layer. However, you can see the seam allowance on here is really large. See how all this space, there should only be a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Of course, you want to save our points, but this is way far away. And that is how you get something like this. Okay? See that? That's just too much. Okay. So you want to trim this down a little bit. Also, one way to check is if your next triangle doesn't fit on the edges. Actually, this one does. But if your triangle doesn't overhang the edges by probably a 1/4 inch, then this triangle is too big. Or the square is too big. This one does, but just barely. So I'm going to trim this down a little bit, which I did not anticipate to do on camera. And I don't have any rhyme or reason right now. I'm just sort of trimming like a 1/4 inch off or so. And how do I know I'm trimming off a 1/4 inch? I don't really. It's probably, yeah, I'm just trimming off a 1/4 inch. Okay, so I've trimmed this down a little bit, and the edges are nice and, no, that didn't work. Nice and clean. The edges are clean. So now you take your next triangle layer and 1/4 inch turn. So the triangle went this way, so now we go here. And on the opposite, okay? The gray goes here and the tan goes here. So you can see how the snail is snaking its way around, is leaving a trail, okay? So now the thing about this side is you no longer have that straight line where we could fit the triangle. This is still even going to be too big. You want to have a little bit of overhang, usually a 1/4 inch, but as long as there's something overhang, you're good there. Okay, so 1/4 inch seam allowance again. Open that up. All right, now you guys know how to do this, so I'm going to try to go a little bit faster. Make sure you overhang. This is straight and flat and lined up, and then the middle point, you could actually see right here that this fabric follows this line. So if that's helpful for you, then use that, okay? Yeah, use that line as your guide if that's helpful for you. Open that up. Put your tan or whatever color you're using, but the next one goes, and I like to work with flat fabric. I don't like it all puffed up. So I iron usually pretty often. But whatever works for you, works for you. Okay, so I did the same thing here. I lined up this side with the middle, and the point coincided with that, and then that lined up there, so I know that is squared up. And then I just open this up, finger press or iron, and then the last one right here. Make sure, if you have a light fabric, make sure you know which side is up and which side is the back. So this is the front, this is the back. This one, sometimes I get confused, I can't tell, but the front side is a little bit darker. So if you're using fabric like that, make sure you double, even triple check which is the front and which is the back. Unless you like the looks of the back better. Sometimes you do. Sometimes you like the looks of the back better and you just throw it in backwards on purpose. Sometimes it's a happy accident. Okay. Now, open this up. Beautiful. Now we want to trim off these little dog ears right here. First, you know me, I'm going to iron this flat. I use a dry iron, but if you need to use a little bit of steam, that's fine. And if you trim off the dog ears, you should have a flat surface. Or pretty close to a flat surface, okay? Like so. Like this is straight across. Excuse me. And so that's how I know everything was lined up perfectly. I got a straight, clean line there. Just by trimming off the dog ears. I didn't have to trim it up with a ruler. I just trimmed off these little tags, these little dog ears. And I know it's a straight line across. So that means I can add my next layer. And a 1/4 inch turn, or a 1/4 turn is right here. And a 1/4 turn is right here. And right here. I'm sorry, here and here, okay? So you line that up. And your thing is getting a little bit bigger. So if you wanted to, you can add some pins now. Make sure you have a little bit of overhang. And here we are back to the center where you can line the point right up with the center line, okay? And then slide sew across there. Same thing all the way around, okay? And then once you've done that, now you're at this stage, you've done this, And now you want to do the last layer. Okay? So again, 1/4 inch turn. Or not, I keep saying 1/4 inch turn. It's just a 1/4 turn. Not a 1/4 inch turn. 1/4 inch is the seam allowance. 1/4 turn. And that's how you get movement in the pattern. So I'm going to add this to here. And this is my 5-inch block, cut in half. So you can see I'm lining up this point in the center again. Line up the point in the center. Line it up here. It should overhang a little bit. Mine doesn't overhang a 1/4 inch, but it overhangs enough. And then again, this side lines up with this line. So now, and this line. So now I know I am square on, and I can sew a 1/4 inch. You could sew it blind like this, or you can flip it over and see where this middle part is, so that when you get to it, you can maybe move a little bit slower and a little bit more deliberately with your needle. And then that won't stretch the fabric, because this one is on the bias. So you want to be very careful about overstretching it. Unless you want wonky. If you don't want wonky, be very careful about the bias and not overstretching your fabric. If you don't care, it means a snail. Snails aren't straight lines, but still. Okay? So, if you wanted to be extra careful and pop in a pin or clip so that the fabric doesn't move at all, you can also do that wherever you want to throw it. Oh, that's a bent needle. That's not, or a pin. Let's not use that one. This one's bent too. Jeez, what was I doing with my pins? Okay, and I think I moved it. Anyway, I don't like messing with pins. They bother me. So, I'm just going to do this. 1/4 inch seam allowance. Get to the middle there. I didn't have to slow down, but you might want to, just to be careful. And there we go there. That shifted just a little bit. You can see how that shifted a little bit off of this line. So that's probably going to mess up my final block. And if I want to, I can rip out that sewn line that I just did and redo it, but I'm not going to do that right now. And then so you add this. So 1/4 inch. Or I keep saying that. It's just a 1/4 turn. And then this one goes here, and then this one goes here. And you can see how that creates that motion. Okay? So I'm actually just going to leave it like that, because you guys know how to do this already. So you can see how that works. All right? And the final product size will be, that is a good question, what the final product size will be. What will it be? It will be somewhere around 9 inches. This probably will be a 9-inch block unfinished. Okay? And that is this. The snail's trail. Okay? I hope that's helpful. Have fun making this. And you should make 2 blocks out of those one little pieces of fabric. Now, can you use scrappy? Sure, you can make it scrappy. I would try, though, not to make it super scrappy, because if you make these different colors, you're not going to understand. It's not going to be that spiral. You want to keep the spiral. So when I say scrappy, I mean use 4 of the same colors, but you don't have to go out and buy yardage. So you could use fat quarters. You can use, whatever cuttings you have left over. You can use charms, because it's a 5-inch square as your last square, but you can't use anything. You can't use like a mini charm, or you can't use, what are those strips? The 2.5-inch strips. Jelly rolls, you can't use those. So charm pack or above. So charm pack, layer cake, fat quarter, so anything like that. Okay? You guys, have fun making this. Let me know in the comments how it turns out for you. And this is our May block of the month because the snails trail, I was out in my garden and I saw some snails and slugs. Actually, I saw slugs. So I was like, hey, that could be our next theme for spring. So have fun making this. Let me know how it goes. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.